Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Fire Force Episode 2. So, yeah, the first episode of this really did surprise me. It was much better than I ever expected it to be, because as I believe I said last time, I went into it kind of like having this notion that it was going to be very, like, stereotypical shonen. It was going to be very bland and generic and boring, but it was anything but on pretty much all levels. The story is pretty interesting, even if it is pretty much the same as Promare, just with a few minor changes, let's be honest. But I think where it really shines is the characters. The characters are really interesting and likable, especially our main character, Shinra. He's actually much more interesting than I would have ever expected from this series. His backstory is really tragic and depressing, and I just really like what they're doing with him. He's a very likable character. Honestly, and I really do hate to admit this, but when I first saw his character design and everything, with the sharp teeth and everything, I judged him based on that. And I was thinking he was going to be some kind of troublemaker, some kind of weirdo or jerk or something like that, just because of the way he looks. Because, let's be honest, in a lot of anime, cartoons, comics, video games, characters are very much designed to match their personalities, are very much designed to just showcase who they are. Now, there's always exceptions to this. There are always exceptions to any kind of rule like that, where there will be characters who don't match that, and usually it's done for a narrative purpose or a character purpose to showcase that one, looks can be deceiving, but also to kind of showcase the idea that we shouldn't judge people based on just how they look. And believe me, I do know that. But because of how media tends to portray things, I did, unfortunately, do that. Luckily, Shinra's not like that at all. He's actually a very nice, respectful, good young man. He's a very, very nice person who just genuinely wants to become a hero, not for any like selfish, self-serving purposes, but as a promise to his late mother and younger brother, who died when he was young. He couldn't fulfill his other promise to them of keeping them safe, so he wants to make sure that no matter what, he fulfills this one and becomes a hero. And it's really genuine, and you really feel for his character, and you also really just, you want him to succeed. Like, normally a character saying, I want to be a hero, unless it's like in a world like My Hero Academia, it sounds very self-serving, right? It sounds like a person saying, like, I want to be famous because it's cool or something like that. That's kind of how it comes across. I want to be famous because it's good to be famous. And it's like, that's really not a good attitude to have. But when it's for a reason like this, it's like you can not only get behind it, but you can actively support it. Because he doesn't want to be a hero just for the self-satisfaction it gives. He doesn't want to be a hero just for the praise he'd receive, though he doesn't mind the praise, as we saw in episode 1. It's just, he wants to be a hero for good reasons, to fulfill this promise. That's the only real thing. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't have a desire to. But it's not just him. The other characters we've had so far are pretty interesting too. Though I feel like they'll obviously get developed more and more as the series goes on. Um, Maki is really fun, a lot different than I expected her to be too. Like just from the art and everything I've seen and her design as well, I expected her to be a lot more tough, a lot more, well, not that she's not tough, but you know what I mean. A lot more strict and like serious and everything, but she's actually kind of a goober when not working, and I think that's really hilarious. Um she's really goofy and silly and lovey-dovey and everything, and it's really cute. Um Obi is a nice guy. He's really friendly, and I like the Fire Force's credo of just not leaving their teammates behind no matter what. That if one of them falls behind, they all fall behind because they're a team. I like that because in real life you won't see that as often as you should. Um, Unfortunately, and not just I'm not just talking about like firefighters or anything in real life. I'm just talking about in general, like groups of people. There's a lot of times where like you'll see groups of people will leave their allies behind in order to accomplish a goal, or they'll even like resign themselves to whatever's going on and tell their teammates just to go ahead and stuff, which might actually come up at some points here. I could see that happening. But the point of the matter is, it's made very clear that they're not ones to do that, that they will not risk each other for their goal here. And I really respect that. I really respect that. Um, the second in command, the lieutenant, I don't remember his name. I like how he's more of the serious voice of reason type character of the group, but to almost a comical degree, like where he threw that clipboard and, it like got embedded in the, I think it was a chalkboard, if I remember right. Um, it was really funny. And the nun girl is really cute as well. She's really fun, and I like how she like dorks around with Maki. I really kind of see them as a great friend dynamic, maybe even a possible ship. um, but yeah, I really enjoy this so far. I know there's other characters that haven't been introduced yet, just from like art and screenshots I've randomly seen about, um, without any context or anything, of course. But so I know there's some other characters who we haven't seen yet, and I'm just wondering like when do they appear, who are they, all these questions. Um, I'm definitely interested to find out. Also, a fun little thing. When I recorded the first episode of Fire Force, not when it was posted last week, but when I actually recorded it. That same day, a reactor I watch, who I talk about all the time on the channel, Rough Senpai, posted his reaction to episode 1 of Fire Force on his Patreon. He watched the sub, mind you, instead of the dub like I'm watching, but still, it's like I just find that timing hilarious. That on the day that I post my, or that I recorded my first reaction, he posts his. I don't know how far ahead of time he recorded it, but I just think that's a really funny coincidental timing. And it's not like it's the first time I've reacted to something that's another reactor I like is reacting to at the same time. Not by any means. um, I'm reacting to Owl House, and a lot of reactors I like are reacting to that. So, as an example, um, but yeah, it's just really funny that it just happened to be on the same day that I recorded it that he started posting it, and I think it was a donation reward for his Patreon. So I don't think it's like a ongoing series for him or anything, but he'll probably end up continuing at some point, hopefully. Um, Either way, either way. Um, I'm definitely excited to see where this goes next. I'm definitely excited to see more of these characters. Um, and yes, there was fan service in the first episode. Let's just briefly touch on that. But it wasn't as heavy as I was expecting, but it was only the first episode, to be fair. Um, I do hear the fan service is notable in this series. But again, as long as it's not too intrusive, like I said in the first reaction, I probably won't be too upset with it. As long as it doesn't actually interfere with the series and like hurt it in any way, like a lot of shows have done. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. Either way, we're just going to get this started and hope for the best. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, I am more mixed on this episode compared to the first one. Because while there were certain things about it that were really, really good, there was one glaring issue that I felt like I really didn't like. And so let's start with that. The one issue I had with this episode is Arthur. Not just his character, because I can deal with his character for the most part, but it's specifically the fact that he has a connection with Shinra here. And that connection, I feel, is interfering greatly with what I loved about Shinra's character in episode 1. Shinra, as I put in the pre-thoughts, in episode 1 was portrayed as like this good, respectful, kind of soft-spoken, just all around really nice young man. He wasn't aggressive towards people. He wasn't like what I expected him to be from looking at him initially, from seeing his character design. And I really liked that about him because it showed my own biases towards certain character designs and whatnot, and will hopefully allow me to improve on that. But also, I liked it because it caught me off guard in a very nice way to see him being such a good, nice person like that. I feel like it works super well. But then we see in this episode when Arthur comes in, it seems that Arthur brings out the Shinra that I expected to see at first. The Arthur that I'm glad, or the Shinra that I'm glad we didn't get in episode 1. And yet, we get that here in episode 2 because of this character. And it's like, yeah, a lot of shonen, a lot of anime in general have that rival character who ends up becoming a friend in the end. A lot of shows do it. But rarely do I feel it's done well. Because either you end up liking one character so much drastically than the other and siding with them so much drastically more than the other that it makes the other character seem inconsequential, or their relationship actually interferes with the quality of the rest of the show. An example of the first one where you just like one of them so much more than the other that the other one kind of just becomes inconsequential to you, where you just don't care about them and would rather just not see them on screen. A great example of that for me would be Dragon Ball Z. I like Vegeta so much drastically more than Goku that I would honestly rather just have the show be centered around Vegeta than and have Goku barely be on screen at all. And and an example of the second one where it's just their rivalry interferes with the overall quality of the show. An example of that for me would be Naruto, where Naruto and Sasuke's rivalry and uh, so-called friendship and everything actually I feel is detrimental to the quality of the show because the show practically revolves around it at a lot of times, and it hurts just everything else that could be happening. It just kills all possibility with the series because it's so focused on that, and it's not even good. So in this situation, I'm not sure which one of those two it would be because right now, as of this episode, yeah, I like Shinra a lot more than Arthur. Honestly, I don't really like Arthur much at all. um, but I could see myself warming up to him if it's done well enough. But I could also see this series going to the point where it becomes so drenched in this rivalry that it just takes away from everything else. And again, I just think the issue here is that Arthur was not needed. Arthur feels completely just tacked on for the sake of having a rival character. As of current, at least, again, I don't know how much that will change, but as of current, as of the end of episode 2, which is Arthur's debut episode still, but yeah, um, nothing has justified Arthur's existence in this series. Nothing that happened in this episode justified his reason to be here. Like, there's no reason for him to be here. Even the argument of, like, oh, but he's there to push Shinra and help him become better and everything. It's like, that's bullshit because you could have used so many of the other characters who were already there for that. Hell, Maki could have been used for that. We see in this episode how strong Maki is. She could have easily been used in that way to push Shinra to become better. We didn't need Arthur for that. There's literally no reason for him to exist as of yet. It literally feels like he was just thrown in just to have a rival character without even thinking about how it would affect things. And it just feels so unnatural too because it's like, oh, we just had a rookie join and then we're just going to have another rookie join some couple days later. It's like, why wouldn't they join at the same time? If they had joined at the same time, I probably wouldn't have as much of an issue with it, though I'd still have some issue with it for the other reasons. But I wouldn't have as much of an issue with it because it just feels unnatural in the way that it was brought in. It's like, why couldn't he have been introduced in episode 1? I know episode 1 wanted to focus on Shinra and his character and his backstory and everything, but they still could have brought him in and then just started to actually focus on him in this episode. It just feels unnatural. It doesn't feel like it was properly thought out. And again, as of currently, I don't see a reason for him to be here. I don't see a reason for his character to exist, and I don't like him either. I don't like his character. I think he's annoying. I hate the entire conceited, I'm a Night King thing. I so hate that. I despise that. And again, he serves no purpose. So But that's the one big thing I hated about this episode, but it is notable. And it does drag down this episode for me and definitely makes it not as good as episode one. But let's get to talking about some things that I really liked. Um, Maki continues to be my favorite character in this so far. Not just because she's buff and hot, although that is admittedly nice. I just really enjoy her character. I think she's really fun, entertaining, um, and funny. And yeah, there is definitely some tropes they're playing with. Most notably being the entire gets overblown levels of upset when someone ever so slightly insults her. It's like she's called an ogre, which is, yeah, it's rude and not very nice, and it's pretty bad to call someone an ogre like that. But she takes it way too hard, like to an un, just to an inordinate degree. Here's the word ogre as this long drawn out insult, um, and is just she seems to cool herself down, mind you. She doesn't take it too far, but it just it is a trope for sure. Um, but I liked getting to see her in action, getting to see more of her abilities, including apparently the ability to bring fire to life. She seems to have two different forms for that living fire so far. Sputter, which is a smaller one, um, that like a Pokemon says its name. Um, and then she named her other one, the big one, that I guess is multiple sputters combined. Bo 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 bo. And I'm not fucking kidding with that. It's just like for those who don't know somehow, that's the name of a older anime from I think the early 2000s. Um it's a gag comedy anime that is so over the top ridiculous. It's really dumb. It's also the name of the main character in the anime. Um and I feel like that have to be a reference, but how? Why? Why would that be a reference for her attack? Like the only thing I can think of is the fact that her attack is round, and I guess so is the character, the old anime character's hair. He has this big round afro, but that's the only thing that I could make the connection with because in the old anime, the character of Bobo is this. I guess you would call him a martial artist who uses ridiculous fighting styles, including his nose hair and a missile that comes out of his afro and stuff. And it's like, what does this have anything to do with Fire Force? And if this isn't a reference, what is going on? I'm legitimately super confused by that. It it threw me off so badly. And part of the reason is also because I don't like that anime. I never liked it. I thought it was always really stupid. It's there are some shows, some anime, some games or whatever that are really stupid but good at being stupid. That are actually very entertaining and fun. This is one that's just stupid. It's just dumb. Not in a good way. It's just dumb. Um, but maybe that's because it's I haven't seen it since I was young, so maybe my views would be changed on it more recently. I mean, I have seen one episode of it more recently because Rough Senpai reacted to it, but that's about it. Um, and it was still very fucking dumb. But it's like, why is it named that? I mean, it's a cool attack though, and Maki continues to be a big, buff, beautiful badass, and I still love her for it. We got to see more of the absolute insanity of the lieutenant in this. And it's like he scares me. But definitely the star of this episode outside of Maki was Obi. Um we've seen up to this episode in episode 1 and a lot of the early part of this episode, Obi is kind of this very chill, relaxed, nice guy. He's very friendly, he's very high energy, and he's very loyal to his friends and coworkers. And in this, Shinra wonders what gets him what would even get him mad. He's even friendly towards Arthur, so what would get him mad? And we do get to see that uh during their mission in this, their job. Um so they're called to this house where this teenage girl's father became an infernal. We find out that a couple years back, her mother had also become an infernal. So this incident has made her an orphan, having lost both of her parents to this same spontaneous combustion issue. And we see her, and it's so fucking heartbreaking. Her sitting there, curled up, crying, and in absolute fear, wondering if she's next. Because both her parents turned into infernal, so she's wondering if it'll happen to her too. And it's genuinely heartbreaking. And I've seen lots of anime, cartoons, movies, comics, games, etc., where people have lost loved ones, where characters have lost both of their parents or have lost their partners, their children, etc., etc. And it's always heartbreaking to see just that moment of fragile vulnerability when they're just broken and in so much pain. I'm not good, admittedly, with seeing that kind of stuff in a lot of different things because I tend to get really, I tend to be really empathetic towards people's plights. Why did I use the term plights? But I tend to really feel heavy emotions when I see other people doing the same. People crying will make me cry, for example. I will cry if I see people crying because I'm sad for them. I don't like seeing people sad. I don't like seeing people in pain. It hurts me to see them like that. And even animated characters like this, it hurts. It bothers me. Especially in a situation like that. This girl who clearly had what can only be assumed a good relationship with her parents suddenly, within the course of a couple years, has them both taken away by the same thing. And her first thought is, what if it happens to me too? That's absolutely heartbreaking. And and Obi does two things after the event. Or well, one before, one after. Before they go in, and I'll talk about what happens inside in a moment here. But before they go in, he talks about why they need to hide their weapons. That because of the bereaved who are losing their family members through this. They don't want to put any more harm and stress on them. They don't want these people to see them going into the building with these weapons. Because in the end, they, as Obi puts it, they are killing people here. Yes, they're putting them out of their misery, but they're still killing them. And we see how much that affects him. And then after the event, when they come out, first, Obi brings this photo he protected out to the girl, a photo of her and her parents. He gives it to her and tries to comfort her as best he can. In just like I said in the reaction, this act of softness. He softens himself for her, despite just moments before being absolutely angry and infuriated. He becomes soft for her sake. And yet, it breaks her to see that photo and everything. It makes her cry even harder. But he still went out of his way to deliver that to her, and that's gotta mean something. But then he tells Shinra, like he asks Shinra, does it hurt? And when Shinra like is like, yes, he's like, don't forget that pain. The worst thing this job can do is make you numb to it all. And it's like, damn. Because that's the thing that I've heard for a lot of real life jobs that deal with this stuff, especially like working in a hospital. I've heard that there's a lot of people who worry genuinely about becoming numb to all of that kind of stuff because they see it so often. They see people in pain with all these horrific wounds or dying. People who work in hospitals, nurses, doctors, a lot of people there have probably seen a lot of death, and a lot of them, unfortunately, might become numb to it because they see it so often, and that, like Obi said, is the worst thing that can happen in those kind of jobs. Becoming numb to that kind of pain and suffering is not a good thing. You don't want to become numb to it. You want to still feel that pain from seeing other people's pain and suffering because it means that it matters to you. The fact that you care so much to feel their pain shows that their pain matters to you and that you would wish to stop it. It's going to hurt, but it needs to. Just like how physical pain in real life is important in order to help you survive, basically, that kind of emotional pain is important to help others in that regard. So I really liked what they did with Obi in this episode. The art and animation, voice acting, all of that was on points as it was in the first episode. But yeah, like I said, my only real issue here was Arthur. I don't feel like he's necessary. And that might change, admittedly, and I'm hoping it does. But as of now, I don't see the point of in him being there. It's just, in fact, I feel like he hurts the quality of things more than he helps it as of this point. And I hope that changes. I really do. because I really don't want him to end up making me dislike this show. Like so many of these generic rival characters have done in the past for me. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. Tell me in the comments below what you thought of episode 2 of Fire Force, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.